In historical India, caste determined a measurable forbidden space attached to the body, the defilement radius. Distances were precise: 24 feet for a mason, 36 for a toddy tapper. For those who consumed beef, it was a 64-foot zone, ensuring total social isolation. These spatial rules appear as early as the 4th century. The traveler Fa Hien documented the Chandalas, a marginalized class forced to live outside village walls. Upon entering a town, they had to strike a stick against the ground to alert others of their approach, allowing people to step away before a shadow could be cast. Untouchability was more than a social hierarchy, it was a physical architecture. It relied on a meticulous geometry designed to enforce degradation through the strict management of distance. In the Peshwa kingdom of Maharashtra, the responsibility for maintaining this distance was forced upon the marginalized. An untouchable person in public was forced to wear an earthen pot around their neck to catch their saliva, preventing it from touching the ground. They also wore a long broom tied to their waist. As they moved, the broom swept away their footprints, erasing any defiled path so that no one else would accidentally step upon it. Even a shadow was viewed as a physical extension of the body. If an untouchable shadow touched an upper caste person, that person was considered immediately impure. This fear of contact often overrode the instinct for survival. During famines, many upper caste individuals refused British aid because it was distributed by lower caste workers. They endured starvation rather than breach the spatial divide. This logic created a world where touching the tail of a cow was believed to bring salvation, while a human shadow brought defilement. The preservation of this geometry became more important than self-preservation, cementing a culture where the fear of proximity dictated every public interaction. The arrival of Christian missionaries introduced a different set of principles, centered on the inherent equality of all human beings. The first major breach of the spatial divide wasn't a political proclamation, it was a medical necessity. While society left the sick and marginalized to suffer on roadsides for fear of impurity, missionaries began to physically touch, wash, and treat them. These acts were institutionalized in places like Arogyavaram, the abode of health. In this plague ward, you can see medical staff standing directly beside the patient's beds, physically occupying the space that caste laws had strictly forbidden. By providing physical care to the outcast, these clinics functioned as a direct challenge to the logic of ritual impurity. Education became the next arena for this struggle over space. In rural schools, the fear of defilement was often more important than the lesson itself. Teachers would throw small stones at lower caste children from across the room to discipline them, rather than risk touching them with a cane and defiling the wood. This spatial terror is visible in the childhood of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who would later lead the movement for Dalit rights. In his village school in Satara, he was treated as a source of contagion. On one occasion, the teacher asked Ambedkar to solve a problem on the blackboard. His classmates immediately erupted in screams, shouting for him to stay back. The students had stored their lunchboxes behind that blackboard. They believed that if he stood too close to the board, his physical presence would defile their food, making it unfit to eat. A shift began when figures like Captain Stewart mandated that missionary schools seat children of all castes side by side. By requiring students to sit shoulder to shoulder, the classroom structure directly contradicted the spatial rules these children were taught at home. This closing of the physical gap changed individual lives. Pegalu Venkaya, a notorious bandit who had escaped prison several times, abandoned his criminal profession after a missionary crossed the social divide to speak with him. These local instances of integration began to influence broader societal views across India. During the movement for Swaraj, or self-rule, Indian intellectuals began to explicitly connect the hope for national independence to the eradication of untouchability. Swaraj is the principle of political autonomy and self-governance. The Andhra Patrika published a sharp critique that political freedom from British rule was hypocritical if Hindus continued to oppress their own people. They argued that a nation could not be free while its own citizens were physically ostracized. This realization helped form a national movement, built on the idea that a fractured, segregated society would never possess the unity needed for self-rule. Untouchability was a system that weaponized physical space to deny human dignity. Political debate provided the framework for change, but the actual erosion of the caste barrier happened during daily, physical acts of proximity. It happened when touching the sick, sitting together in classrooms, and treating everyone as a neighbor. Equality only begins when the physical barriers between us are removed.